Hey everybody, what's up? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever is appropriate for you. Chad Wesley Smith here, another episode, Beers with Chad. Not drinking beers today because I gotta go coach my first and second grade, well really first and kindergarten, flag football team, Costa Mesa 49ers. 2-1, tough game last week, very good team that we played against, but we came much closer to them than any other team has so far. So yeah, can't be drinking beer before I gotta go coach some insane 7-year-olds. So I have only the finest raspberry lime spindrift. Cheers to you fine folks. So today, in the open here, gonna talk about just some updates on the most difficult sport rankings episode. A lot of feedback there, still get a lot of comments on that Instagram post. If you haven't checked that out, check the full episode out with the context, so you can actually understand the why behind it and not just blindly react in rage that your favorite sport isn't ranked number one. Gonna talk about that. Gonna talk about how I learned about coaching and program design, a question I got on Instagram today, so I figured I'd give a little bit of my background there. And then I have the beautiful Marisa Inda on, and we talk about Diddy. We talk about the P. Diddy scandal, raid, all that stuff. Marisa, not a conspiracy theorist, but she dabbles. She dabbles in the realm. So she did some extra research on all that stuff and comes and shares some of her findings, and we talk about that. So as always, Beers with Chad is brought to you by the Juggernaut AI app. You can use code BEERS to save on your subscription when you visit juggernautai.app, and this will give you fully customized, individualized strength training programs. So it's looking at your gender, age, height, weight, strength, experience lifting. Are you weak off the chest in the bench press, at lockout in the deadlift, out of the hole in the squat? Where are your weak points? How do you sleep? What's your diet like? What's your stress like? All of those things. What's your past training history like, to design a custom program for you. And then every day you answer a short questionnaire. How'd you sleep last night? How sore are you? Stuff like that. And it continues to adapt and grow and change with you to give you the smartest program for you. So again, use code BEERS at juggernautai.app to save on that. And we have a very cool addition coming to that in the next week or two. So be on the lookout for that. All right, so the most difficult sport rankings. The first thing I want to talk about in regards to that is the word difficult. And the word difficult comes with some loaded connotations to it. And I think people use that, or those connotations lead them to feeling that certain sports should rank higher within the framework that I ranked them with. I don't know that framework was necessarily the best, but if you listen to that episode, I did that because it's the same structure that ESPN used for their rankings. This category by category, like how much strength on a scale of 1 to 10 is required to be good in this sport, speed, agility, that type of things. How demanding are these sports in that area? Where difficult, I think, has a connotation maybe of uncomfortable, which endurance sports certainly, and this is still subjective, and there are people who are going to be much more uncomfortable doing a speed power sport. But for the most part, endurance sports are more uncomfortable to do than speed power sports or a lot of team sports. But does that make them more difficult? For my purposes, no. I'm trying to take the connotation away from the word difficult and contextualize it more as like most challenging to achieve success in. So if you have a sport like distance swimming, where you have one technique, freestyle, and one main quality that's being tested, endurance, and there's a little bit of strength and some flexibility and some mental, fortitude, but a pretty simple sport in that sense compared to something much more complex like MMA, where you have tons of different techniques, strength being tested in a significant way, speed, power, agility, certainly a nerve, mental toughness side of things, and then this constant, quickly adapting, changing scenarios, so your analytic abilities and tactical abilities have to be so high. That's why you're going to find the sport MMA ranked number 1, and distance swimming was ranked very low, even though it's not saying that being a distance swimmer is easy. It's not saying that being great at any of those sports is easy. They're all hard to be good at. So we're really splitting hairs here about what is the most difficult. But when something tests a wide variety of skills versus a narrow set, even if it tests that narrow set, very like a high test in a couple categories, the broad set's going to be more challenging to be successful in. And that's just from a statistical standpoint. Like, it's less likely that you have someone genetically who's capable of having that broad set of skills. So that's sort of the first thing to address with that is the word difficult. It's not the most uncomfortable, it's the most challenging to achieve. Found through this, and I kind of knew that this was going to be coming, but people really stood out to me that people love 3 things. Apologies for my gross pinky if you had to look at that. People love 3 things. They love, first off, arguing that their own sport is the most difficult. The odds that, after someone came on and said, no, swimming is the hardest, no, soccer is the hardest, no, triathlon is the hardest, whatever it is, and then I clicked on their profile, assuming that they didn't have a private profile, which most internet commenters do, and I frankly don't think, if someone has a private profile, I feel like they shouldn't be allowed to comment on anything. I think you should have to comment like with a real name. But when they didn't have a private profile, or I could tell what they do, maybe from their photo, 9 times out of 10, they were arguing for their own sport. Not a surprise, but this kind of speaks to people's lack of critical thinking and ability to remove personal biases from a situation. Not that I am perfect at doing that, but I think I did a better job at it than everyone who was commenting, arguing for their own sport. Notice the sports that I've done, one of them, second to last, powerlifting, throwing kind of a little bit below the halfway mark, strongman in there, sports that I had done though. They also love ignoring the context of a discussion, So was I able to explain my rationale behind every category and every sport in a 90-second Instagram reel? No, I was not. Did I even do that necessarily in the 45-minute or whatever it was podcast? Probably not completely, but people who, just saw where the sport they wanted to be ranked higher was ranked, and then wanted to argue about why, rowing, a sport that I didn't even rank, well, that requires, elite endurance and strength and power and mental toughness, and ignored, the rationale behind any of the other rankings or what, thought went into each category. Of course, they missed the point. Am I surprised by this? No. I myself fall victim to reading headlines and not reading the full article sometimes, but I also don't go and angrily comment on the posts about that. And then finally, kind of building off that last one about the elite rowing requires elite this and that, is they flippantly use words, elite prominently being on that list. If someone has elite strength, no other context, that means they're one of the strongest people in the world. Now, if they have elite strength for insert whatever sport you want here, a little bit different discussion, but elite strength for even a sport that requires, pretty good strength, let's say American football, elite strength for an American football player is not elite strength for a strongman or powerlifter. That's why American football linemen got 8 on strength and not 10, like some people would want to argue for. So words have meaning, they're significant. You can't just throw them around. You can't create, if you want to create your own definitions for all of this and post your own list, please, I encourage you to. I probably won't look at it because, well, frankly, I don't care about your opinions that much on it. Which brings me to my next point: why my opinion is better than yours, or at least most of the people commenting on it. And I say that, and I know I sound like a dick when I say that, but there's a lot of comments on there like, well, have you ever even played ... And I really enjoyed that most of the time I got to respond to that. Yes, I have played soccer. Yes, I have played, insert it here, or I have coached it at a fairly high level. So it became easier for me to tell you the sports on that list of the 39 sports I ranked that I have not either played competitively or coached as a strength and conditioning coach, physical preparation coach, at least the high school level, if not often the college, national, or international level. So the sports on that list that I haven't been involved with at that level were boxing, gymnastics, tennis, skiing and snowboarding, rock climbing, figure skating, though in the figure skating I did talk specifically with Janice Okamoto, who's been a national level competitor for figure skating and weightlifting, diving, distance cycling, and cross-country skiing. So those 9 sports out of the 39, I admit, I have very little intimate knowledge of. But, several times I said, have you ever even played water polo? I'm like, yeah, I played it a little bit as a kid, but I was a strength coach for high school, college, and national team water polo players. So I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on the demands of water polo. Is one person equipped to answer every single question about every single one of these sports? No, not even I, who have a very high opinion of my own opinion, is arrogant enough to think that. But I am very confident in saying that of single individual people who are going to take, a couple hours out of their own afternoon to make a list like this, I probably have the most diverse and in-depth background in the widest, broadest variety of these sports. So I just value my own opinion on it more than someone whose entire sport history is in gymnastics and they want to tell me how gymnastics should be number 1, or entire sport history is in swimming and they want to tell me how swimming should be number 1. But that's all not to say that, my list is without fault. So here are some revisions I would make as I had more time to reflect on them. A couple of good points here and there made in the comments of things. So some revisions I would make. I would move wrestling ahead of rugby. I think I scored wrestling too low on the speed side of things. I only gave it a 5 because, well, there's not any running, there's not any sprinting in it. But as I watch more wrestling and see particularly the lighter weight class wrestlers, they are incredibly fast, explosive, quick, and really, really remarkable athletes. Like I saw this video of a kid the other day, 16 years old, 6 foot, 210 pounds, just doing flip after cartwheel, after front flip, after back flip, up and down the wrestling mats, and just astounded by his abilities in this regard. And would he be an elite gymnast? No, because he's 6 foot, 210 pounds. But his ability to move his body powerfully and with great speed really struck me. So wrestling, I'm moving up to now number 2. Gymnastics. Gymnastics is a tricky one. First off, I should have split gymnastics into 2 categories, into men's gymnastics and women's gymnastics, because the disciplines are different, so the demands are different. Men's gymnastics would have gotten a little bit higher on a strength score, maybe a little bit lower on a flexibility score relative to women's gymnastics, if women's gymnastics is a 10. And they both probably should have been moved up then to a 9 for nerve. I'm not going to put them as a 10 for nerve because, well, no one's trying to, if it was like contact gymnastics and there was 2 people doing floor routines simultaneously and you could tackle the other person in the middle of their floor routine, that would be a bit different. But gymnastics is tricky, and there was a couple of people who commented about how, well, gymnasts, they could shoot a basketball and throw a football and do all this, but those guys can't do gymnastics. Sure, true. That's not what the rankings were based upon at all. Is gymnastics the best base for all other sports if I had to pick one? Yeah, it definitely is. But gymnastics doesn't have really any tactical, analytical aspect to it because you're performing a preset routine. You're not having to adapt to a defense or this outside stimulus as you go. For women's gymnastics, I think it does hurt the argument of it being the most difficult sport when, save very, 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 very few exceptions, the time where the people are most elite at it is 16 to 19 years old. So you just have a shorter time to develop that ability, and it's remarkable what they do. But if, by law definition, a child is the person who is the best at it oftentimes, I have a hard time putting that above sports where people have to spend longer to become the best at it. Swimming, well, sprint and distance swimming. And, I'll admit my personal biases here. Endurance sports I find to be incredibly lame. I just always have. They've never interested me, probably because I've never been someone who was going to do or be good at endurance sports. I was over 10 pounds at birth and 275 pounds when I was 17 years old. So I never aspired towards triathlon or distance cycling or anything. But I've been around enough triathletes and enough long distance runners at elite, college and beyond levels to know that their physical skills were not particularly transferable to a lot of other things. So it never really interested me. So I did probably let some personal bias seep through here. But for both swimming, sprints, and distance, somewhere where I definitely think I discounted them was flexibility. They both should have been a little bit higher there. And maybe a point or two higher for coordination. That's going to be a little bit individual. If someone does one stroke versus like a medley swimmer, the medley swimmer's got to be more coordinated than the one stroke swimmer. Sprint a little bit higher than distance on the coordination side of things, just because it's harder to move faster with great coordination. But that would have moved them both up a couple spots, moving distance swimming out of the last spot, moving powerlifting down to the last spot. Sorry, powerlifters. But yeah, it's just lifting weights. I did it, done it for a long time, and been around a lot of these other sports, and powerlifting is just not that hard, relatively. It's not that it's not hard to be great at it, but it's not as hard and having as wide a variety of demands as some of these other sports. So those are some reflections, some updates to the most difficult sport rankings. You can continue to argue with me in the comments. I won't particularly care, but there's a chance that you might break through and make me slightly change my mind about something. So after the intro here, I'm going to talk about how I learned about coaching, and then I'm joined by Marisa to talk about the Diddy scandal. Cheers. Welcome to Beers with Chad. All right, so today on Instagram, I was asked about my recommendations or how I learned about coaching and program design, and what recommendations I had for the question asker. So my answer here was going to kind of go beyond the scope of what I could post in a story. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit more in depth. And the first way that I learned about coaching and programming, and strength coaching specifically here, is by doing it, is by writing my own program and training really hard for a long time. I began seriously lifting weights as a freshman in high school when I was 14 years old. And from then until now, with, maybe about 2.5 years of exception in the last 23 years, have written my own program. I was 14 in the year 2000, a much more barren internet scape for learning about strength and conditioning, but I would scour the early 2000s internet for all the information I could find. Critical Bench was a big one that I liked. There was this Australian, Queensland weightlifting website that I liked a lot. Elite FTS, Westside Barbell. I would read those articles religiously. Like every new article that came out that I could find, I was reading it. And then I trained hard, very hard. In high school, it was not uncommon for me to train 3 or 4 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, a mixture of, my own track and field practice, throwing the shot put, football practice when it was football season, but then medicine ball throws and plyometrics and lifting, weightlifting, powerlifting style training, bodybuilding style training, all kind of mixed and mashed together for very, very hard training. And I was, by high school standards, very big, strong, fast, and athletic. Like my senior year of high school, I weighed about 270 or 275 pounds, and I could dunk a basketball and ran like a 4.8 40-yard dash, about 6 foot 275, while benching 365, squatting 550. Not great depth in the squat. I probably squatted like 600, but it wouldn't have been a powerlifting legal depth, but was putting the weight on my back and moving it around. In the high school, one of my big things I did in my training in high school was those jump soles. If you're familiar, strength shoes are a similar thing. If you ever had an East Bay catalog, you would have seen those. And they're these front platform shoes. So your heel is off the ground and you get extra Achilles stretch in it, and it's supposed to make you jump higher, run faster, all that stuff. And the workouts that come with it, they're fucking brutal. Like 500 contacts of different plyometrics and skipping and hopping and bounding and everything. And I would do those workouts like 2 or 3 times a week before I would lift. And this was sophomore going into junior year. Yeah, going into junior year of football, and then before junior season track, and then again the next off season. And the smallest I was at this time was like 240, so bigger than probably their intended user. But doing all this stuff and having this goal in mind of being as big, strong, and explosive and powerful as I could, I also made sure that I was questioning along the way, is this helping? Is this working? And, maybe just had some natural aptitude for it and some luck. People like to do what they're good at. I was good at sprinting and jumping and squatting and power cleans and that kind of stuff. So I gravitated towards more of that, while maybe a lot of other high schoolers like doing curls and more bodybuilding type of stuff, which is just not going to be as useful for athletic development. So I gravitated towards that stuff and then questioned how it was working along the way. And I had very simple metrics of how well is this working. Can I run faster? Can I jump higher? Am I throwing the shot put further? Less specific indicators to, can I dunk now? Can I dunk a tennis ball, a volleyball, a basketball? I would do this overhead backwards medicine ball throw and try and throw, like a 12 pound medicine ball onto the roof of our gym. I would see where it would hit up on the wall and kind of like gauge that mark. How many stairs could I jump up at a time in like a broad jump type of thing. So rudimentary, but effective indicators, and then just kind of thought critically as well as I could at 15, 16, 17 years old, what is helping, what's not helping. What do I like and not like in regards to the results it's bringing me. I continued to think critically about that for people that I coached, which I became, because we didn't have a strength coach at our school, I became kind of a de facto strength coach for other guys that I played high school football with. And then even a little bit more formalized of that when I was like a senior in school, and our football coach being like, hey, can you help Steve? Can you help Kevin? Brad, these younger guys on the team, can you help them in the off season and get them going? So I thought about it with them. Then I started coaching formally as a paid professional coach. My first summer out of high school, helped run the off season. No, sorry, my second summer. So my first summer back from college, I ran the summer program for my high school football team, and I got to write a program then for 70, 80 kids. And, now I went from having one guinea pig myself, to then when I was helping other guys on the team, I just had 5 or 6. Now I have like 75 guinea pigs, and get to get more feedback and see how different people respond, and, figure out what was working and what wasn't working. So along with that, of a lot of experimentation, trial and error, and critical thinking about the feedback I was getting from that, the other area where I learned how to coach a lot was by actively seeking out information from a broad variety of sources. And I didn't do this intentionally. It wasn't like I was 15, 16 years old and I was like, I'm going to talk to all these different coaches and learn how to do it, and that's going to make me a better coach 20 years from now, when I'm talking on a podcast about this. It just sort of happened. It was my natural inclination to do this because we didn't have a strength coach at the school, and because my shot put coach was not our school's coach. I had a different kind of private coach, but he didn't do my strength, he didn't do my lifting, just my kind of, I call him a technical consultant. He just coached me in the ring. I would be at these track meets, high school track meets by myself, with my parents, but without a coach. So I sort of gravitated and latched on to a couple of other coaches who had good throwers, because I knew, well, those guys are good coaches, so I want to learn what they think I should do. So that was Tony Chiarelli and Bill Pendleton, who were hugely influential to me early in that time. And I'm eternally grateful to them for answering my questions. I was their competition, more or less, but they were always very helpful and kind of took me under their wings there, because I think they could see how passionate I was about it. So going to Tony's clinics and then talking to him, who's a great weightlifting coach, a great throws coach, and talking to Coach Pendleton, also a great throws coach, football coach, strength coach, about what they were doing with their guys, what they thought I should do, what they've seen work. That was where I was gathering information. Then as I was getting recruited for track, I would go to my visits, my college visits, University of Arizona, Arizona State, Cal, and talk to the coaches about training, about my training, about how I can train better. And I think that they were always sort of taken by that, like, wow, this guy really cares about improving. And I did, and I do, but I wanted to gather that information. So I'm getting, high school football strength and throws coaches. I'm getting college sprint coaches, multi-event coaches, throws coaches. Like, I was talking to everyone because I wanted to be the fastest. I wanted to jump the highest. I wanted to be the strongest. It wasn't just throws coaches. Then as I got to college at the University of California, Berkeley, getting some time, talking still to our sprints coach, to our hurdles coach, to our multi-events coach, to the throws coach, to the strength and conditioning staff. We had a coach, Mike Velasquez, who was the head of Olympic sports strength and conditioning, and he had come from De La Salle High School, which to me was the pinnacle, 12-year, 151-game winning streak. He was their strength coach for the large majority of that streak. So getting to talk to him about what they did. Then John Krasinski, not Jim from The Office, but that was the head football strength coach's name. I met with him, talked to him about what they did. He had competed in strongman. I was starting to get into that. I was reading, again, still, a lot of Elite FTS, a lot of Westside, a lot of Joe DeFranco, at the time, I'm taking all of that information, the track and field information from my coaches at Cal, talking to coaches from other programs. Like if people love this stuff, they love to talk about it. They love to tell you about it. So, don't hesitate. Like if you run into someone at a meet or a seminar or whatever, talk to them about it, because more often than not, they're going to be willing to share because they're passionate about this as well. So I was talking to coaches from different teams and just seeking that information out. Then I left Cal. I started coaching high school football. I was only 19 years old. And I was running our strength and conditioning program now for the entire year, not just the summer, and then started going to seminars, to strength and conditioning seminars, to football coaching seminars that had strength and conditioning elements to them, meeting more coaches, getting more diverse opinions, taking what worked, harness good, block bad, harness good, block bad, like Kevin Nealon says in Happy Gilmore. So I was getting this diverse base, and one of my favorite books, Range by David Epstein, he talks about this. And I see a lot of times with, let's say, powerlifters and powerlifting coaches, is that's like the entirety of their experience. So if all you've got is powerlifting experience, all you've got are powerlifting answers. But sometimes you need some thinking, outside that powerlifting box to solve the problems. So as I became more conscious of why this was important, as I got older and farther along in my career, then I was more intentional even about, I'm gonna talk to sprint coaches, I'm gonna talk to football strength and conditioning coaches, I'm gonna talk to powerlifters when I started competing in powerlifting, and strongman competitors. And what do weightlifting coaches have to offer us here? What do bodybuilders and bodybuilding coaches have to offer us here? What do physical therapists have to offer us here? So that's what I would encourage you to do if you want to be as great of a coach as you can, and really, you could extrapolate this out into other fields as well, but gain diverse experience in and around your specific field. Don't think that just track coaches have all the answer for track and field success, or just football strength and conditioning coaches and football coaches have all the knowledge for football success, or powerlifting, or whatever it is. Don't box yourself into a narrow space there. Look for range and breadth of understanding. A couple other specific coaches I want to highlight is, first and foremost, James Smith, the thinker, who's had by far the biggest influence on my strength and conditioning career. I had the good fortune to employ him for a little over a year. That was like beyond a master's class for me. Everyone says, read Super Training, read Science and Practice, read Transfer Training, all this stuff, these translated texts, and people read them. I don't think that most people understand them, but James did, and I got to see him put those ideas into practice in programs that he created, and ask him about it, and get what ultimately became very intuitive answers. And he was hugely helpful. So I'd encourage you to seek his information out. Charlie Francis stuff has been a huge influence for me. Buddy Morris, particularly early in my career, interviews that I'd seen with him were huge influence. But seek broad information. There's plenty of lists of books out there. Those are all well and good. Read them. Implement the ideas in whatever way you understand them into your own training. Help other people with their training if you can, so you got more guinea pigs to figure things out with and can get through the trial and error process faster. Think critically about why this is working. Try not to become emotionally attached to the way that you're training. That's a big one, and maybe a story for a different day. But that's what I would encourage you to. Scientific Principles of Strength Training, that's a good place to start. But all the periodization by Bompa, Science and Practice, all that stuff is good. Transfer of Training, Bondarchuk stuff was big to me. If you want to be a powerlifting coach, don't feel like you have to only learn from powerlifting coaches and powerlifters, because there's a lot more information out there. So take what's useful from everything around you. All right, going to take a quick break, and then going to be back with Marisa Inda to talk about Diddy. Today's episode of Beers with Chad is brought to you by the Juggernaut AI app. If you want the smartest program for you, fully customized, adapts to your feedback, grows as you grow as a lifter, visit juggernautai.app and use code BEERS to save on your monthly subscription. Well, hello, my love.
Hello.
So today will be the first in a, I don't know about, probably not weekly installment, but you never know what's going on with the world of Marisa's Conspiracy Corner.
The tentacles of the octopus.
Yes.
Fast.
How you doing this morning, baby?
Good.
So let's give it a little conspiracy background for you, because I guess I'm a little bit more on the skeptical side generally, where I think you're a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like I'm a conspiracy theorist.
No,
I don't fall completely down the rabbit hole. I just peer in.
You just peer into the rabbit hole to see what's going on.
Yes, and a lot of times those conspiracies tend to have some thread of truth to them. So
it does seem more and more often that is the case. I mean, you know about Professor Les.
So, I mean, you should have Professor Les on here instead of me.
I can handle Professor Les. So there's a guy, one of the black belts at our school, our jiu-jitsu school, he's a flat earther. And once you go flat Earth is basically an umbrella under which all other conspiracies exist, because most of them are just to protect the knowledge that the Earth is flat. So I typically check his Facebook page every day for updates onto what's really going on in the world.
But I think people like him give everybody else a bad name.
Well,
I think it's okay to question what's happening.
I'm concerned now sometimes that he might be right about everything. That's with every passing day that becomes a little bit more real. What's your go-to conspiracy? Not conspiracy. Your go-to information source.
Well, House and Habit. She's
Okay.
very good, and she gives a very thorough let's look at it from all views. But then if you go to TikTok, which they want to get rid of TikTok, which I don't think that they should, because people really go on some deep dives.
They do.
They go on some deep dives. And then Telegram, of course, and you have to admit, I get the news at least a day before you do.
You do always have the news before me because of Telegram. But I don't need Telegram because I have you to keep me informed. So today what we want to focus on are the allegations, and I don't even know that this really falls on.
It does fall under the conspiracy.
It's got the conspiracy angles to it for sure, but of Sean Diddy, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy Combs.
I mean, he goes by many names.
And the man goes by many names. He's a man of many interests. So where do you want to start with Diddy?
Well, I think, like you were saying, people are assuming this doesn't fall under any type of conspiracy, but if you follow the conspiracy people down the rabbit hole, he is just a pawn in a bigger conspiracy, which is political things. Having, what's the best way to get things in your favor is to get blackmail on people who have higher positions than you have. So
we talking Illuminati?
We're talking political figures here, and I think it goes way back to the late 80s, early 90s with Puff Daddy and everything that was going on there. But again, he's just a small pawn in a bigger conspiracy that involves people that are higher up. So there's rumors that he knew that the FBI was going to come and raid his places, and that they let his private jet go to Antigua and land there because there was documents there that have people's names in it that go further than just musical artists. You're talking political figures that.
Because we're talking, I'm seeing Puff Daddy get.
And these are all allegations.
Yes, yeah, allegedly.
But allegedly.
Don't sue me. Don't sue me, Diddy. So Diddy's kind of getting framed, not in the sense of fake, but
he's taking the fall.
Framed in the same way of Jeffrey Epstein, not framed in the sense of the word of he didn't do this and he's being framed with this, but he's being portrayed similarly to kind of, I think, how people see Jeffrey Epstein as, when Alex Acosta said that he belongs to intelligence about Jeffrey Epstein, that maybe people are thinking the same kind of thing about Diddy, that he was being used as a pawn to gather information about other famous people and bad things that they were doing.
Yeah, and because then it creates this umbrella of blackmail where people then have to owe you favors because they get afraid of information coming out that's going to make them look bad. So 6 months before the raid, P. Diddy released all publishing rights on his artists, which, like, why would he ever do that? And there's a ton of money in that. But they all had to sign NDAs that they would not say anything bad about P. Diddy. And if you backtrack even further than that, in the late 80s and late 90s, let me get the names right here.
Because Diddy been, a very prominent since about, 93, 92, 93 would have been, as he was going through Arista Records and was like their A&R guy, and then started Bad Boy in maybe 93, 94. Yeah. So he's been famous for a long time, 30 years.
Yeah. So back in the late 80s, early 90s, where this kind of all gets tied back to like higher political figures, favors within like the industry is Lucian Grange, which he was the CEO of Universal Music, and then Lyre Cohen, which was also a former CEO of Warner Music. They were accused, because a CIA whistleblower came allegedly that they used gangster rap to glamorize criminal behavior. And if you look it up, this is all like verifiable. You can find the information on it because there were two companies. It was called Core Civic. It was formerly CEA Corrections Corporations, and GEO Group. They own almost all the private prison beds in the United States.
Okay.
And so they then also had like something in their, like when they did these agreements with these states, that they had to have like 90% occupancy rate. So this CIA whistleblower came out saying that these two gentlemen who were like in charge of like hip hop at the time, like were promoting gangster rap. And this is something even Tupac rapped about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then you fast forward a little bit further, and then that's where P. Diddy gets involved with all of these people. And then the shooting at the club, where a lot of things are coming out about J-Lo now, that she...
And Shine.
J-Lo with the Glock, not J-Lo from the block.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, and that guy Shine, who took the fall,
yeah,
he did 10 years. He got deported back to Belize, and now he's a very high-ranking political official in Belize. And him and Puff Daddy are now friends.
Huh.
So I said, we could do like a whole chart here, and it could just really unravel into something crazy.
It's such a trip, you think, because that was like 1999, 2000, when J-Lo was dating then Puff Daddy. Mm-hmm. Maybe he was P. Diddy about that time.
So many name changes.
But such like J-Lo seems so far removed from someone who would have dated Diddy at this point in her life. I mean, Ben Affleck, the guy says in Role Models, "You white, you Ben Affleck." And it's very different than Diddy. So what they're saying, J-Lo was a weapons mule.
Something like that. That she was, I don't even know if she's implicated in anything other than like she knows more than she's letting on, but that the guy who ended up taking the fall is now like a political figure in his country. And it's like, well, people will question, well, why is that? There's all these ties to then other favors and other, like the prisons being able to get these big contracts from all of these other states, but why? Is it because there's, information on all of these other people?
How does this relate, though, to Diddy, the diddler?
The parties and the...
diddling, like, Justin Bieber's butthole, allegedly.
Well, because then if you get all of these other high-ranking artists in on it, and they're all, they've sung at the White House, they're in with all of these high political people, you get them to these parties, and like I said earlier, the best way to get a favor is if I have blackmail on you, you're more likely to do things to save your own ass. So,
and I guess a lot of it too is sort of like the power of. I've heard Joe Rogan talk about this, where sort of the power of fame and how that's sort of a validation to other prominent people, and be like, oh well, this guy, Justin Bieber is going to be there, or the Cuba Gooding Jr. is going to be there, or this person's all like, oh, it must be cool, it must be good and legit, like I can go too, and I don't have to research about it. And that's sort of what maybe Jeffrey Epstein was doing, in that if he creates some connection to Bill Clinton and or Bill Gates, and other people are like, oh, well, this guy knows Bill Gates, or I guess originally Les Wexner, and they're like, well, Les Wexner is a rich, successful guy, and I'm a rich, successful guy, so this guy must be legit to know for rich, successful guys. So Diddy's just kind of using that same sort of, not guilty by association, but almost innocent by association in the people's eyes who would then get involved with him, and then he entraps them.
Yeah, because then it becomes that thing where it's like, why would Justin Bieber's mom let him go stay with Diddy at this young age? Well, as a parent, I'm like, oh, he's P. Diddy. Like, why on earth would he do anything nefarious? Like, this is not, you know, some weirdo that you just met on the corner street. So, and then like it gets into, it's the conspiracies, the layers, they keep adding up because
peel a layer back.
We're gonna peel a layer back, because then we've had this discussion before. Well, like you're expecting like 10,000 people to keep this secret, and then you see artists that kind of unravel and just go a little bit crazy. You have like the Orlando guy,
or they get,
who's kind of like gone off the rails,
or they get painted as going crazy.
Or they get painted as going crazy, like Ryan Garcia, the boxer, is kind of the other one that's kind of, people have said, oh, he's just, you know, gone mentally ill, Kanye. But the conspiracy behind that is like these people knew things and then they got MK Ultra'd.
Oh, okay.
Which, you know, that is also something that the CIA and the FBI these are programs that they do have in place to kind of, you know, mind fuck you, if you will.
Now, I haven't heard really any talk in regards to, you know, recently, Diddy and his involvement in like Tupac murder, I guess more prominently than him murdering Biggie, or being involved in that, since I hear more talk of that Diddy was actually the target of that. But I feel like all this stuff coming out, even though it's not really directly tied to that, has to give some more credence to like, well, was it then Diddy who paid Keefe D and the Crips to go and murder Tupac, and you know, was that revenge? And
yeah, because the bodies start lining up.
Yeah,
you know, Cassie, you know, people even in his, you know, ex-wives, ex-girlfriends getting paid off.
Kim Porter,
and other people before that. If you go down the rabbit hole, it's like, oh, dead.
Because
paid off.
You know, when I heard people talk about, you know, Diddy paid the Crips for protection, and he paid the Crips to pay Keefe D to murder Tupac. Allegedly, yeah. Well, I mean, Keefe D's arrested now. But I kind of always thought, because particularly in the 90s, and, you know, when it was like Death Row versus Bad Boy, it was like, well, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, is a bitch. You know, he's like Suge Knight is a gangster.
Yeah.
Puff Daddy was a little dolphin teeth, do his funny dances. Like he's a music guy. He's not a fucking gangster. But now it's like, well, was he actually gangster the whole time, or whatever? This, you know,
a puppet master.
Yeah. So it does kind of it changes my perspective on events of 25 years ago.
It really does. When you start looking back, and then you really start connecting the dots. Like I said, the tentacles, you could go crazy. You could build a whole room and just start lining it up.
Well, I mean, there's a little wall space back there.
Space back here.
Yeah, that could happen. Of the allegations in these different Diddy lawsuits and things coming out now and speculation, which one is the most surprising to you? The most shocking? Or the name involved that you're like, whoa, that's a name I was expecting to see?
There's a lot of names. Like, I loved Cuba Gooding. I like Cuba Gooding. Chachi. Not Chachi.
Scott Baio is... Bob Loblaw is intertwined with the Diddy thing. I thought he was totally unrelated.
It's hard to know, because there was so many parties where people get invited to. And even other rappers who had been like, yeah, you know, I was told to leave 30 minutes before the devil comes, and that's what Denzel Washington would tell everybody, like, leave 30 minutes before the devil comes. Like, it was well known, like, if you don't want to be involved, you need to remove yourself from the situation. And there was things happening where they were like, yeah, it's people you wouldn't think.
That's when the adrenochrome starts flowing?
Probably. That's a whole other conspiracy.
Because this talk with, and this goes beyond Diddy, and, you know, you've heard me say this many times, but like, when it's always like, oh, the global elites are pedophiles and this kind of stuff, I'm thinking to myself, like, if I'm a multi-millionaire, most famous person in the world, billionaire, private jets, all that stuff, why the fuck am I, trying to bang 15-year-old Justin Bieber, but I'm a man? Like,
but
is it a thing of like they just get so sick of 20-year-old Victoria's Secret angels that they're like, I've had a lot of the most beautiful women in the world, but you know what sounds interesting?
No, I think what it is child trafficking is still, and always will, hopefully, be a big no-no. Like, that's the one thing you can blackmail people with. Like, being gay, doing things like that. I feel like now it's not a blackmailing type of pun. So, like, yeah, if it gives you ability to then still maintain and have power and control everything.
Yeah, but why are so many people being enticed by?
I don't think they get enticed. It's kind of like when you think about
or they're just around it, and now you're guilty by association.
Or you get guilty by association, or you become guilty. There's this whole thing like with cartels. I'm just going a whole different route here, but with cartels, and people always ask the question, like when you get border patrol people or that get involved with cartel, or even political figures in Mexico that get in bed with a cartel, it happens almost accidentally, where you get one favor to help control something, and then before you realize it, holy shit, I'm in bed with these people that I never should have done one good thing with.
Literally in bed? Or
figuratively in bed. I mean, I think that's the same thing that happens
well,
in these types of things. Like, maybe you're there and you witness something and you don't say anything.
Yeah.
And then you become guilty by, oh, well, you were there and you didn't say anything, so now I have this over you.
Yeah, now you're involved.
You're involved.
Because, the amount of the gay pedophilia side of the global elites, it always makes me wonder, do you have to be a pedophile to become a global elite, or do you become a pedophile after you're a global elite?
I think
is that some sort of rite of passage, or is there some special brain chemistry going on?
I just still feel like it's not a brain chemistry. I feel like it just still becomes, that's still a thing that everyone can be blackmailed with.
So it's not necessarily that it's actually that those guys are doing that. It's this, that they're around it and don't.
I mean, who knows?
Because that's always been the most confusing part to me. That I'm like, why would all these super rich famous guys be like, yeah, we'll bring in the 12-year-old boys, that's what we're into. And it'd be so like consistent, or
or that's just what you're hearing about, and then there's blackmail and other things with like affairs, whatever, and then you can garner favors and things that are going to make you more money and give you more power and control. Like I said, if you go back to even just the prison industry in the late 80s, 90s, how does one company, which ends up also being tied back to BlackRock, because they own, but it's like, how do they, when you control all of that, how are you the only one that gets that bid without anyone else bidding on it?
And is that why the FBI would be sending letters to NWA trying to talk about, you can't play this song, but then they really knew that it's going to make them want to play it more, and we're going to give them this attention, it's going to make it more popular, then more people are going to go to our private prison, and then we're going to control the world.
Maybe, but I mean, you can look it up, and that is a thing. It does become, why do you allow something to go out, and then,
that letter to NWA really helped their popularity. FBI gave them a lot of free publicity with that.
Yeah, but true.
Predictions on where
I think
the Diddy
I think just like with the Epstein scandal, the only people who will fall is people that aren't big enough to cause a big ripple in the ocean. And I think Diddy is falling at this point. Everyone's like, oh, why would they let him fall now? It's like, because I think when you have the exes and these other people coming out against him, now it's become like, oh shit, there's too much going on around you that's causing, concern for other people that too much information on. So
related, some CIA handler being like, Cassie, it's time, go now.
There is speculation that he will not survive this if he's got to go to court and talk and all of that.
Like physically survive.
Physically survive.
Have the old One of those special heart attacks where the back of your head blows out.
Maybe, one of those. And then, again, the people who will fall are people that are probably just not deemed worthy enough to, or that people will care enough about what they say. They'll be like, oh, that's enough for us, let Cuba go down. Not Cuba.
Yeah,
not show me the money.
Rod Tidwell. It's been quite the fall from grace for Rod Tidwell here.
It has been.
All right, well, if you have other conspiracies that you'd like to hear some opinions on, or, we'll say controversial news topics.
Yes.
Marisa's always excited to...
I am. I love a good conspiracy.
Yeah, you get the extra insights from your hairdresser.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a full-on, we're watching a video today, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, babe.